Could we see the Heisman Trophy go to a Service Academy player? There's a chance if Blake Horvath can lead Navy to the college football playoffs and have a season similar to what he did last year, because he put up some crazy numbers. Now, looking at Navy's schedule, it's looking pretty doable up until the end of the year to stay undefeated. The first two games will be super easy with a win over VMI and then a win in their first conference game over UAB before a road trip to Tulsa.
And Tulsa won't be that much of a challenge either. Tulsa was the worst team in the AAC last year, and they did not get much better. Navy should move to 3-0 before their first bye week here, before taking on Rice. Now, they did lose to Rice last year, and Rice still wasn't a great team in the bottom half of the AAC standings, but they did get worse. They lost a couple of their key players from last year's team. And that's ultimately why I think Navy will be able to get the job done here against Rice at home, just because so much of Navy's team is returning from last year. All of their skill positions are back. Like Jonah was saying, Blake Horvath is the key to their offense, and he is their starting quarterback next year. But they do have their starting fullback in Alex Texa coming back. They have their starting running back in Eli Heinrich also returning. And if they do ever decide to throw the ball to a wide receiver, they have Nathan Kent, their wide receiver one, back as well. And defensively, they did lose a couple key players in the secondary and on the defensive line and in the linebacker core, but they should overall still be one of the better defenses in the AACs. So Rice should not be too difficult for them this time around, especially at home.
Back out of conference for a classic matchup with Air Force, and the Falcons really not going to be very good this season. We saw them struggle a lot last year. I think it'll be more of the same this season. Navy is just by far the superior service academy right now. They'll pick up that win pretty easily and then head back on the road in conference play with a trip to Temple. Also, shouldn't be that difficult. Temple wasn't very good last year, and the returning production not near the top of the conference. I think that they're going to struggle this season, and Navy will not struggle in this game. Heading into their second bye week, they will still be undefeated at 6-0.
And after that bye week, they're back at home taking on FAU, and FAU was the second worst team in the AAC, only ahead of Tulsa. Both had the same record, but FAU had a better offensive output, but it's really not going to matter. This Navy team is just on a roll this entire way. They should move to 7-0 pretty easily before their first real test of the season, a road trip to North Texas. And North Texas was a really good team last year. Definitely the best team they played thus far from a conference standing perspective from last year. They did go 3-5 in conference, 6-7 or overall, but they had one of the better teams overall. Chandler Morris was their starting quarterback, but he is now at Virginia, and he was the driving force of North Texas's offense. And with him gone, I do think that we're going to see a little bit more aggression from North Texas. So Navy should still get the win here, but definitely their toughest opponent so far. That's not Air Force in a somewhat of a rivalry game between the service academies.
Now, they won't be their toughest opponent for long because the Midshipmen go on the road to South Bend. Notre Dame coming off of their national championship berth, and I think they're going to be a really good team once again. They should be able to make a push for the college football playoffs. Again, they're going to have a younger starting quarterback, but at home, Notre Dame really has no business losing this game. They destroyed Navy last season. I think that they're going to be able to do the same thing here. Even though Horvath might be able to keep it a little bit closer, it's really going to come down to only him. And to beat a top team like Notre Dame, that's just not going to work. Navy will fall here for the first time this season.
The following week is against USF, and this is really the toughest stretch of games that they have. North Texas, Notre Dame, both on the road, and then USF. USF finished 7-6 last year, was 4-4 in conference, and has in the past been a decently competitive team. I believe it was a couple of years ago where they nearly upset Alabama early on in the season. And I could see USF pulling off a bit of an upset here against Navy, especially coming off of a loss to Notre Dame that is likely going to be a bit of a blowout just because you can't, like Jonah was saying, you have to be more than a one-dimensional team to beat the top teams. So maybe USF can figure out this midshipman offense, but I don't think it will matter. As long as Blake Horvath is healthy, they should be the favorites against most of the AAC. I do think that Navy will get back in the win column here and beat USF coming off of that loss to Notre Dame before going into their final bye week of the season.
Next up is Memphis, and this game is actually going to be pretty tough for Navy. The Tigers went 11 and 2 last season, and they rebuilt a lot of their team through the transfer portal, whereas Navy brought back most of their roster from last season. So we are going to take Navy in this game, and I think it's going to be really close because Memphis is the other best team in the AAC, along with, Tulane and Navy. Those are your top three. However, we are going to bank on continuity as the key factor. Navy maintaining most of their roster is what's going to be able to help propel them to a win in this game.
And this would be the first time that Navy beats Memphis on the road since their first ever matchup back in 2015. And I think it's probably time for Navy to go on a bit of a run in this matchup history because they won against Memphis last year at home. And if they can go two in a row, then maybe Navy might be here to stay in the AAC, even when Blake Horvath inevitably moves on from the program. But this could go either way, and there might be a chance that we see a rematch of these two because after Memphis, it is the AAC championship game, and with Navy's record here, they would be for sure, they would 100% be in the AAC championship game. Their opponent would be the winner of Memphis or Tulane, in our opinion, and we think Memphis will likely win that game because it is a home game for the Tigers, and the Green Wave are also having to replace a good amount of their team with the transfer portal as well. I just think Memphis is a little bit more proven over the years, and really it could go either way, but home field advantage is going to be the ultimate deciding factor. So we might see Memphis and Navy rematch just a week later, but we will get into the AAC championship game predictions once we go through all of the teams we do these predictions for. So the next game up that we're going to talk about is one of the best rivalry games in all of college football. It is Army versus Navy.
And this version of the Army Navy game is going to look quite a bit different from last season. We already talked about how much Navy's bringing back. Army, not the same story. Bryson Daly gone, as well as a lot of their other starters. I think that Army is not going to be nearly as good as Navy this season. We still have the percentages of 50-50 because in these top tier rivalry games, everything really just goes out the window. So it is a true 50-50 matchup. But in this case, we have to go with the team who has Blake Horvath, and that is Navy. He's just going to be significantly better than whoever Army can throw out there at quarterback this season. They're going to have a downgrade from Bryson Daly, and I think it is going to show. I really do believe that Horvath is going to have a great season, and I think he's going to get maybe a win in the Army Navy game to move them to 11 and 1. Now, technically, that won't be their record at this time because, like Connor said, they will have played in the AAC championship, but we are only predicting their 12 regular season games. Navy is just a weird team to try and predict because their 12th game is after their conference championship game. I don't make the rules. We did not do a way too early projection video for Navy, but the Vegas over under is at 8.5 wins, so significantly lower than what we have them going. I just don't know if Vegas is really valuing the amount of returning production that Navy has significantly enough. The new projection going to be 8.65 wins, 6.25 and 1.75 in American Conference play. Floor going to be 8-4. If everything goes wrong, yeah, Navy can lose 4 games. There's some other good teams on the schedule. We talked about Memphis. You could lose the Army game. Obviously, Notre Dame already we have as the loss, and you could drop one more somewhere in there. So yeah, it is possible to see a significant drop off from Navy. I just really don't think it'll happen. And then the ceiling is going to be 11-1. I'm sorry, but you're not beating Notre Dame. There's just no way. So we are predicting Navy to hit their ceiling of 11-1 this season. So thank you guys for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you in our next video.